All right. So now let's see this particular question, which is a very common interview question. So in this particular question, we are given an array of positive integers, and we are also given another integer, which is called target in the input, right? And what we need to do is we need to find out if there exist two distinct indices such that the sum of their elements is equal to the target, right? So basically we need to figure out that in the input array, do we have two such numbers which sum up to this target variable, right? So for example, if you see in this particular input array, if you see 6 and 10, they will sum up to the target, which is 16, right? And hence my output will be true. If I don't have any such pair of numbers, if I don't have two numbers which sum up to target in the input, then my output will be false, right? So this is the question entirely. This is what we need to do. Now maybe you can just pause this video here and try to think of a solution. You can think of any solution. It can be naive or it can be optimal, right? But just try to come up with a solution. And then once you are done, you can just come back and check the solution here. Okay, so now to solve this particular question, see what we can do is we can maintain a hash map over here, right? And then what we can do is we can actually iterate over each element of this particular input array. And then we can keep creating the entries of each element that we are looping over in this particular hash map, right? And then at every element, we will also check that if we have already seen, target minus current element in my hash map, right? So I will do two things, when I'm actually looping over each element in this particular input array. One is I will create an entry of the current element in the hash map. And then I will also check if, I already have an entry of target minus the current element in my hash map, right? Because if I do, then it would mean that this particular current element and that element, that target minus current element will actually sum up to this target variable, right? And hence I will actually have a pair of numbers or two numbers in this particular array which will sum up to target, and hence my output will be true. So that's what I will keep doing as I am looping over this particular array, right? Over each element. Now let's try to backtrace this particular solution on this example input, right? So now what we are saying is that we are going to iterate over each element of this particular array, right? So when we are at index 0, that is 1, what we will do is, first of all, we will check if target minus this current element, that is 16 minus 1, which is 15, is already present in my hash map or not, right? So I will just do a lookup in my hash map, which will be a constant time operation. And of course, initially my hash map would be empty, so I won't get that 15 over here in the hash map. And so what I will now do is I will just make an entry of the current element in this particular hash map, and I will just move on to the next number, right? And then again, I will see if, the target minus the current element, that is 16 minus 4, which is 12, is already present in my hash map, and it is not, right? So then what I will do is I will again create an entry of 4 in my hash map now, right? So now my hash map will have 1 and 4, right? With their corresponding indexes. So that is fine, right? So what is important over here is that we keep maintaining each number that we are seeing over here as keys over here in the hash map, right? But then the values can be anything. I mean, the value can be 0 for each key that we are actually inserting, or we can keep it anything, right? So what I will do is that as in when we are inserting new keys over here of the current element that we are seeing, we will make the value as the current index of that particular element, that where we have seen that element, right? So, but that doesn't matter really over here, right? Because we just have to return true or false. We don't have to actually return the actual indexes of, the numbers that are summing up to this particular target. If we had to return that, like the actual indexes, then we would have, made use of, the indexes that we are storing with each of the key over here in the hash map, right? So now after 2 iterations, my hash map will look something like this. It will be 1, 0, and then it will be 4, 1, right? And then I will move to the next number. Now it is 45. Again, I will do target minus 45, which will be minus 29. And of course, minus 29 won't be present over here. So I will just make an entry of 45 as 2, right? And then I will move to the next number. Now it is 6. Now I will do target minus 6, which will be 10. Now again, 10 is currently not present over here in this hash map. So again, I will make an entry of 6 over here and then mark the index or the value as 3, right? Which is the index of 6. Now what I will do is I will just move on to the next element, which is 10. And now I will do target minus 10, which will be 6, right? And now I will check if 6 is present in the hash map or not. And in fact, it is present in the hash map now. So that means I have actually found two numbers which will sum up to this target, right? And now I can return true over here and I can break out of the loop. I can simply return true over here, right? So that's the algorithm that I'm going to follow. And in case I don't have such numbers which sum up to the target, that would mean that I will actually loop over all the elements of this particular array and I won't return true, right? And then once I come out of the for loop, I can just simply return false because I did not get any two elements which sum up to the target, right? And hence I can actually return false if I'm coming out of the for loop, right? If actually there are two elements which exist, then I would never come out of the for loop. I will just return at some point in time from within the for loop itself, right? So that's the solution that we are going to follow. Now talking about the time and the space complexity. Now see, time complexity, we are just looping over this particular array once, right? Over each element of this particular array. So it is going to be order of n, right? Where n is the number of elements in this particular array. And space complexity will also be order of n because now we are maintaining a hash map over here. And in the worst case, we might have to loop over every element of this particular array till the end, right? And hence we might end up maintaining this particular hash map for all the numbers of this particular array, right? So that means the space complexity will also be order of n over here, right? So the time complexity will be order of n and the space complexity will also be order of n over here, right? So that's the solution. Now there is one more approach to actually solve this particular problem, and in that particular approach we can actually do it in constant space, right? In order of one space without using any extra space, but then there will be a trade-off with the time complexity, right? The time complexity will increase a bit, right? So but then that particular solution I will just leave up to you to think a bit, and then maybe you can just comment it in the comment section that what you thought and what would be the actual time complexity of that particular solution, right? You can think of that, and if not, I will just post another video and I will just explain that particular solution as well, right? But this is the optimal solution for this particular problem: order of n time complexity and order of n space complexity as well, right? So that's it. Now maybe let's see the code for this particular solution. All right, so now let's write the code for the solution that we just discussed. So first of all, what I will do is I will just create a function over here called toSum maybe, right? And this will accept the input array and the target variable like this, right? Now what I will do is, first of all, I will just capture the length of this particular input array in a variable n, right? And then what I will do is I will just declare an empty hash map over here, right? Now what I will do is I will just run a for loop in range 0 to n like this, and I will basically loop over each element of this particular input array. And what I will do is at every index I will check first of all if my target minus the current element, which is array of I like this, is actually present in my hash map or not, right? If it is present, that means we have to return true, right? Because it would mean that the current element and this particular number which is present in the hash map, target minus array of I, will actually sum up to the target variable, right? And hence, since I've got two such numbers which actually sum up to the target variable, I can just return true over here, right? Otherwise, what I will do is, else I will just create the entry of this particular element in my hash map, right? And I will just assign the value as the current index, right? So that's what I'm doing. Now at the end of the for loop, if I'm not able to return true at any index, it would mean that I don't have any two elements which actually sum up to the target variable, right? And hence after coming out of the for loop, I can just return false over here like this, right? And this is going to be the entire solution, right? This is what we need to do. Now maybe what we can do is we can quickly test this particular solution on a sample input, right? So what I will do is I will just declare an array over here, and this will be the same array that we saw in the explanation part, right? So I will quickly copy it from there and paste it over here, right? And also I will just declare a target variable as 16, right? And now what I will do is I will call this particular function toSum over this particular array and this target variable, right? And also I will just print the output of this particular function call, right? Like this. And now my output should be true, right? Because I have two numbers which actually sum to the target, this 6 and 10, right? So now if I run this, I get true over here, right? So this is the entire solution. I hope you understood it well. And now I will see you in the next video. Thank you.